Hello and welcome to the Real Estate Nerds Podcast. On this Bad Beats episode, we will explore the human side of real estate investing with a seasoned pro about to make the legendary worst deal of their life. A deal isn't just the investment, it is also the person. Stay with us and learn what it takes to be the best investor. Hi, and welcome to the Real Estate Nerds Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Royal Smith. I'm the owner of Royal Legal Solutions, the home for everything tax, legal, everything asset protection for real estate investors. I'm here with my good friend, Bill. Bill is just a phenomenal real estate investor. I'm very excited to have him on the show here today. He has a wealth of experience that he's going to be sharing with us through kind of like a best deal, worst deal combo of the roller coaster of investing. So Bill, thanks for coming on the show today. And what can you fill us in about? What do we need to know about you, coming into this deal so we can have some background for the listeners?
Well, sure. Yeah. I kind of started in real estate kind of later in life. And I was actually located in Port-au-Prince, Haiti for about 12 years. And as a missionary out there with my family. And I was kind of looking at what I was going to do when I returned back to the States. And it was kind of getting near the end of my time out there. And I realized, I had to, I really wasn't prepared to retire yet. So I started looking at different options, found real estate investing, and first started out buying some turnkey properties, looking at markets that I felt were emerging markets, purchased some single families, some duplexes. And I was just noticing in the process of that the duplexes, I paid about the same for the duplexes as I did for the single family homes. But I just found that, everything was sort of better because, I had a vacancy. I only had a 50% vacancy as opposed to 100% vacancy with a single family home. I had one tax, bill, I had one insurance bill, but really I had, two doors there that I was getting rent on, and I was getting twice the rent that I was getting for my single family. So it was really obvious really early on that, the economies of scale really made sense going to multis as opposed to single family. So I started looking at apartments and started looking at, what might be available. I was already in 3 markets in Memphis, Atlanta, and Indianapolis. And, at the same time thinking, going into an apartment, that seems like a big endeavor. So I just, studied and I read everything I could so that I really would go into it with a good base of knowledge. And I felt, pretty confident, but at the same time, there was sort of that analysis paralysis thing. Well, let me run some, kind of test deals and start, looking at the numbers, because the numbers definitely are different when you're looking at multis. And so, I'm just toying around and dragging my feet for a long time. I start looking at properties, but at the same time going, well, I don't know if I'm really ready. So I happened to go onto LoopNet, and I looked in the different markets I was in, and I was looking in Indianapolis, and I saw this 22-unit property that looked like it was in a good location because it was sort of between, 2 major emerging areas, the downtown area and another area that was just kind of up and coming, sort of a millennial hangout, and it was pretty cool. And so I'm looking at it, I'm weighing it out. I'm going, well, let me start doing the numbers. I'm doing the numbers. I called the broker, started getting some information, you're putting it all together. Then I started talking to the finance side. I was talking to local banks and talking to different folks. And finally, I get the courage together to make an offer. And I go ahead and put a LOI together, send it in, and boom, it's already under contract. I'm going, oh man, and it had been sitting on LoopNet for a while. So I was kind of bummed out. And in that process, I was saying, well, I'm going to learn, dragging your feet on this, that, you need to move quicker, especially in today's market. So I was, just about to say goodbye to that deal and go on to others. And I thought, well, let me just call the broker back and let them know that I'm interested, and let them know that if something happens that maybe the deal doesn't go through, to give me a call, because I'd like to be first on your list there. And talked to the broker, and he said, sure, but it looks pretty good. The guy looks like he's got the funding, everything together. So I just kind of went on to other things. And about 3 months later, I get this call, and the deal didn't go through. And the guy said, well, are you still interested? And I said, sure. So I was kind of in a better position. He had a deal that didn't go well. I think, they were off, they're asking, I thought a little high on their, on their asking price. So I came in considerably lower than what they were asking for. And I thought it had a little bit of an advantage, because they already, the seller, had one deal go bad, and he seemed anxious to want to be able to sell the property. So worked with them, came up with a pretty good price that we both agreed to. Then I got in and, started putting all the papers together, the due diligence. We had an inspector come out, and after the inspector came in, I was able to knock off another big chunk of the price. And so now I'm probably about 25% below the original asking price. And I felt, even at least 20% below market in terms of what I was estimating the property to be worth. And ended up getting the deal. I definitely had some tough experiences on the financing side, because I didn't have the apartment experience. I had some small multis, but I really didn't have the apartment experience. I was told by somebody that I knew in the Indianapolis area that, go with this bank. They're really looking for some commercial business. So, I spent a long time working with this bank, and right. I mean, as my time, I'm under contract here, and the clock is ticking. And at the last minute, they say, no, we're not going to do it because you're not a W-2 employee. And I'm going, oh, come on, man. You guys knew that before I started this. And boom, I'm just going, oh gosh, was this a bad deal? Should I have gotten involved with this? And so at the last minute, I had to find funding. I had to pay a higher interest rate, because now the clock is ticking. I had to go to the seller, buy some additional time so that I could put the funding together. Got it together, got the property, and I'm going, all right, this is great. I'm just totally stoked. So that was sort of the good thing. Something worked out
like
good there.
Roller coaster inside of trying to even get I mean, and when you even start making that transition from doing single family to multifamily, that's a big jump in itself, like psychologically, as well as, the risks that you have to take, getting into it. How did you cope with that? What was your mind frame around that?
Yeah, well, that's why I think it was dragging my feet, because I thought it was a lot more to expect than it really was. It wasn't all that different than doing a transaction on a single family or a duplex. I mean, it really wasn't. There wasn't a. There are some. You have to look at a lot more numbers, and you are concerned about the who's there and the leases. You're looking at the leases. You're looking at the people, and there were definitely some folks that were tenants there that I knew were going to be a problem, so there were some things a little bit, but it really wasn't that different. And I don't know why I was so afraid of it, because it wasn't like I was putting together a syndication, which is where I'm focused now. It was just a simple little transaction. I'm buying it as a single buyer, and but it was the dragging the feet part that really I think kind of hurt me. And the other part of it was, that I thought was a win was, and a lot of us don't do this, is when maybe we're after a property and it goes under contract, we just immediately just go away. But going back to the seller, to the broker, and saying, hey, I still interested, don't forget me. And I just, 3 months later, I just thought that, the deal went through, and getting that call really was a winning thing, I thought. And, being able to buy it so much under market value was a real plus. So a lot of things turned out to be a big win in the beginning. And then, things started to change. Okay. And this was the
This is
part
after
that
you thought you got the win, right? Like you closed on the deal, you went
yeah,
through the hard work with the insurance, you're, scrambling to find, outs, and you think you got like a great deal in the apartment, and then you're probably thinking, I'm ready to go to the beach. But
yeah, that's it. I'm ready just to sit back and wait for the mailbox money to come in, right? But it was located, like I said, between two pretty dynamic areas where a lot of activity was going. It's what you call in the path of progress, and but the question was, well, how quickly is that path going to to move? How quickly is that progress going to hit us? And that was where I wasn't ready, and I was a little bit thrown off because there were some little surprises that happened. One of the early ones. One part of what I did is I did sort of a major. I'm a value add investor, so I was looking at ways to cut expenses, looking at ways to boost the rent. The rents were already under market, which is a plus, but I was looking at the other aspect of it, all the various expenses. The owner was paying gas and water, which is pretty typical. The tenants are paying electrical, but every apartment had a gas stove in it, for example, and plus I also had boilers, which I'm from Southern California. I didn't even know what a boiler was, but this massive boiler in the basement that that heated the entire building, and it was old. And I was thinking, well, how is this going to do it? It was working, but I was a little bit skeptical, and I was looking at, well, what would it take to replace this? And I was looking at it, going, this is crazy, Plus, I'm paying to, basically heat this place. So we went through, we changed all of the apartments, and we put 220 in each apartment, rewired the place, moved electric stoves in to replace the gas stoves. We went, sideboard heating, floorboard heating, and we, transferred those costs, of course, to the tenant who was paying electrical. So, that cut our costs quite a bit. We also did a lot of rehab as each unit became available. We would, go through and do a pretty significant rehab, and we were able to increase rent, anywhere from 16 to 20% for those units as they came up. And then, as we were doing improvements to the, mainly common area and exterior type improvements, tenants were seeing that, hey, this building is going through a transformation. So they were pretty easy when we first started raising rents. We started like at a 6% increase, letting them know that in another year they're going to get another 6%. So things were going pretty good. But I'm an out-of-state owner, so a 22 unit doesn't really warrant having an on-site property manager. And I had a property manager, a pretty good property manager in place, but they were not able to be there all the time, and so little things were starting to happen. And, one of the first red flags is when my property manager was approached by the local police department. They said, hey, do you mind if we use one of your empty upstairs apartments, because we're putting together a little sting operation for the prostitution trade in the area? And we're going, okay, great. This is wonderful. And so they get a little corner unit. They're up there. They got guys undercover, and they are waiting, for prostitutes to show up and do this little sting. And I guess they had some of their own plants that were actually, police, people that were disguised as prostitutes too. So it was that was like sort of a first
That's
big
crazy.
red flag. And
that's crazy.
So I mean, the good part about it is that we made some great contacts with some police, guys that we basically said, hey, you can come back anytime to use this place. In fact, if you ever want to use our place, come in, have a cup of coffee, and fill out reports. We'd love to have your cars in our parking lot. Just kind of sending a message to anybody that's out there that's unsavory, maybe even a tenant. That the cops are our friends, and they're going to be present. So, it was kind of an issue. And then we had to deal with some real tough tenants. I mean, some guys we thought were dealing, others we thought were, maybe pimps, that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
But how did
And
you,
so,
what made you think, like, if you're in such a rough area with that, it's probably economically depressed as well, right? To start like throwing cash into rehabbing everything, right? Because you would think like in
well,
those areas it doesn't pay to rehab because the price is not, volatile, like to be able to move it up.
that was, I mean, I had done, my research. I'd really looked at it, and I had seen, transformation going on in the immediate area, right nearby us. There was a building right next to us that had a lot of students in it. It was a good, strong, tenant base. And there were some, a couple of streets down that also, were doing, some strong, blue collar. It was definitely blue collar, and still is blue collar. But they did not have the same tenants we had, and that was part of the issue when I bought the place. I knew it had poor management. The guy that was managing, the owner, managed it himself, and he just kind of let anybody in. And I think that's what had happened, is that they just were allowing folks in that weren't really screened very well. And so we had to really move into a whole different mode of what I call stealth tenant marketing, where we started targeting major employers in the area, going to their HR department and giving them flyers where if any of their employees signed up, for our apartment, they get a month free, and just all these little incentives, trying to get some good, working folks into the building, and that really did help turn things around, considerably. But there was that remnant there, and so we had to go through, trying to find out exactly, if there were some sketchy things being done by some of these tenants, which is tough to do, and as some of these people that we thought were questionable would be late on their rent, then we would immediately serve eviction notices, and that's how we were kind of moving some folks out. It was a little bit easier to do that than to prove that they were doing illegal activities. So it was one of those things. It's an area in transition, and so
Yeah.
we just got a little more aggressive and started targeting the people we wanted in there. And so as we started to get those types of people in, the dynamics did change. But there were those few holdovers, and that was tough. And so I had to really, really monitor my property management very closely, because they would have a tendency to kind of just get somebody in so that we don't have a high vacancy rate. But I was more concerned with getting in the right people. So there was a little bit of a tug of war there for the first year or so.
Did you have anybody helping coaching you through what to do with this kind of distressed property to be able to come up with
Yeah.
these ideas? Because these are some pretty novel ways, I think, of executing that plan. But so did you have like an advisor with you, or like a co-partner to help you with this?
Not really. I mean, I've always had mentors, and I had some good mentors, starting out. One of which had done similar types of things. He was doing a lot of Section 8 stuff, and so he was kind of familiar with the group I was dealing with, and did have some great ideas that helped us to kind of move out the folks that were a problem, and move to this other realm. And since then, we've done a number of things. One, we put closed circuit TVs in all of the units. I brought in what I call a house mom, which is a tenant that pays a lower rent, with the job though of monitoring what's going on, keeping things in line, and reporting any tenants that are doing things that aren't right. So between the closed circuit TV and the house mom, we've been able to really stabilize and get a great group of people in there now. So it went from really great to really scary to really great again. And I think we're going to be able to stay the route now. I mean, with the improvements we've done, with the rent increases, we've almost doubled the value of the investment. So it has turned out, well for us on our end. It was it definitely is a C building. I felt like at times it might have been a C minus, but I still think it's probably a pretty solid C. It just really, it's all management. It really boils down to having strong management, having strong criteria for your tenants, and not really just trying to get bodies in there, but really trying to get the right bodies in.
But also, I mean, it sounds like you were having to do stuff that was more active with your management. Like you couldn't just turn over the property management, even with just the criteria. Even like it sounds like what you had to do is actually tell them like, hey, I actually need you to go post flyers. I need you to go source people from like these employers. Like that's not standard, right?
Yeah, well, that's just it. Because I'm dealing with property managers in all of my and other states as well, and it's like 90% of the property management I've had, just is just not very good. And so I have just found you need to document and almost put a manual together for each property manager based on the needs of that particular property and that area. And if they can't do it, then you got to move on. And if you don't set key criteria in there and have strong communication, that's really, as an out-of-state investor, the property manager is your number one key to success or failure. And if you don't handle them right, and if you don't get the right people in, then you're just doomed for failure.
Yeah, well, it sounds like it, but I mean, it also sounds like you able to jump into something that was kind of risky in a lot of ways, right? Because you had a mentor that was experienced in that kind of asset class, right? I mean, to be able to jump into it, but because think about your story, right? Is that you're able to overcome some fear to be able to get into a deal that you think is a great deal, only to find out that holy smokes, this whole other piece, I didn't even see it coming.
Right, exactly. And that was, and that was something that, again, with all the research I could do, I mean, talking to people, hanging out in that neighborhood. I mean, I went there all hours of the night. I just really researched that area. I didn't see this coming. I didn't see prostitutes out there. I didn't see, some of the unsavory folks that, later on I encountered there.
Sweet, innocent Bill doesn't even see the prostitutes. I just don't see them. He's got these virgin eyes, and I just don't even see him anywhere. That's it.
Yeah, no, it was, I'm pretty blind, but then later on, it got really gnarly. I mean, that was, I mean, they were using our parking lot, to turn tricks. I mean, that's one of the reasons we got the cameras out there. Yeah, it was pretty, I mean, and we also did another kind of unique thing in that, we're trying to boost revenues. So I actually converted 3 of my units to Airbnb units, which was one of the best things I had done. And these units were basically pulling in double what my other tenants are paying, and they're always booked, and it's a higher level of person that's coming in. And so that was really great for us, but they were the ones that were, my other tenants were never telling me anything that's going on in the building. And it would be the Airbnb people that, that would say, hey, I got propositioned in the hallway here. And, and I go, oh, really? I go, yeah. And this guy, tried to sell me, some coke, I've got to go, come on, And so it was through that I started to realize, gee, there's some major issues going on here. If it wasn't for them, and I don't know why the other folks were so quiet. Maybe they're afraid that people may, retaliate or something if they said anything. But the other tenants were not telling me these things. And but if it wasn't for the Airbnb folks that were there, I probably wouldn't have known about some of the things.
Nah, that's awesome, Bill. I mean, you really covered like so much in your story today, Bill, and thanks you for going into it. One of the ways that I like to wrap up each episode is kind of like a lesson learned. So if there's something you want to leave everybody with as like a lesson learned from your story, like what do you think that would be?
Well, I basically I have you've heard like Peter's principle, whatever can go wrong will go wrong. Well, I kind of just upgraded that a little bit. I call it the old dogs principle here. And that is what you don't even suspect to happen probably will happen. And it may be worse than you expect. In other words, when you're in this business, you really need to be prepared for the things that you can't prepare for. And those are the things that, you have your exit strategies, you have your plan A, B, and C. You really got to think, gee, there could be a tornado that's going to come through here and just totally trash this place. So there's going to be, there's going to be riots in the streets and people are going to, invade my property. I mean, you have to think outside the box, that there are things that are going to happen that you really didn't plan on, and maybe even in all your experience you never have had to deal with before. So that's how you have to go into these things with your eyes wide open. You can do all the research you want, but I always say that the real education begins the moment you sign those escrow papers. That's when you start learning about real estate investing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing that really helped you in your situation, when I look at it is the importance of having a mentor and people in your corner that are really experienced and smart about what to do. Because when you get those unconventional kinds of problems, they're the ones that you can draw on to be like, I need better ideas of what to do because I don't know. Right. And they're not like, you can't just type that on an internet form or Google search what to do for that. It takes like having a resource that you can tap into. And maybe that's like a good lesson. And to a lot of these is like when you're jumping into something that's new, like a new asset class, like you are, it's like having those mentors that can even help you see things up front, but it's like the unknown unknowns, the things you don't even know, like this, that kind of bit you, that it sounds like your mentor was able to help you through getting to the other side of it. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean that really is. I also, I have a podcast that's, I a lot of folks listen to. I have some great guests on. A lot of these guests I've made relationships with, and so I can call these guys up that are in similar types of areas that I am, or maybe even the same cities that I'm in, and I can tap into that, and then sometimes, and I share on my podcast, I share, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and so people, really kind of hear what I'm going through. And so it's, a lot of times people will write to me and say, hey, I dealt with that same thing, and here's what I did. So I have a pretty broad sphere, and I'm also, active in biggerpockets.com and other places too, where I interface with a lot of folks. And that helps too. That's kind of my extended community where I do get these, some feedback and some great ideas from other people I interact with.
That's awesome, Bill. And people want to get a hold of you. What's the best way for them to do that?
Well, the best thing is our website. We have a website for people that are 50 plus. They're investors that are kind of starting later in life with real estate, and it's called the Old Dogs REI Network, and dogs spelled DAWG''S, so Old Dogs. And of course, I'm the sort of the main old top dog here, and you can just look that up, Google it. You can also do a search on iTunes. Just type in, DAWG, and you'll find our podcast. But our website is olddogsreinetwork.com. And if you go there, we've got articles, we've got podcasts, a lot of great resources. We're not selling anything. We don't really have coaching or anything like that, but we're there to help and as best we can for those that are either approaching retirement or already in retirement and looking at real estate investing as a means to help them out. That's
awesome, Bill. Well, I would encourage everybody to reach out, if that applies to you, and get it. I think like Bill does a great job of really just kind of letting it, all just air out of like, here's the way things really shake out, and this is what it's really like. And that's pretty refreshing, to get that kind of point of view from it, because you can get a lot of gurus out there that just blow a lot of smoke. And I don't think that's what we're all about. I think we're all about trying to show the world as it really is. And then, you get to gear up and then decide if you want to do that. And you get the good, the bad, and the ugly that comes along with it. And that's called living life. So I want to thank you again, Bill, for coming on today's show. Of course, this is the Real Estate Nerds podcast. I'm your host, Scott Royal Smith, the owner of Royal Legal Solutions, the home for everything real estate investor related, tax, legal, everything asset protection. Thank you again, Bill. And for everybody else, until next time. That's all for this Bad Beats episode. I'm your host, Scott Royal Smith, with the Real Estate Nerds podcast. Did you see yourself in any part of that story? I know I did. If you enjoyed the show, leave a review to help clue in the sleeping masses of what they need to know and what we all need reminders of. Do your good deed for the day. Thanks, and I'll see you again soon.